Step back, not 100 years, not 1,000, but over 6 million years, into a world where nothing resembled what we now call human. In the heart of ancient Africa, long before cities, tools, or language, a silent revolution was beginning. It didn't roar. It didn't announce itself. It crouched low in the shadows of the forest, watching, adapting, evolving. This was not Homo sapiens, not even Homo erectus, but something before, a fragile in-between, neither ape nor man. They didn't know they were changing the course of life forever. They were simply trying to survive. This video invites you to witness that hidden chapter, 6.4 million years ago, when survival planted the first seeds of what we now call humanity. Because to understand who we are today, we must confront who we weren't. 6.4 million years ago, Earth was not the domain of humans. It belonged to the apes. The African landscape was home to a wide variety of ape species, swinging through trees, foraging in the underbrush, and thriving in ecosystems untouched by human hands. These were not cartoonish ancestors. They were intelligent, adaptive, and perfectly suited to a world that did not yet require fire, language, or tools. From dense forests to drying savannas, apes reigned. They lived in complex groups, communicated with gestures and sounds, and solved problems in ways we're only beginning to understand. And yet, somewhere among them, one lineage was beginning to walk a different path. Not because it wanted to, but because the environment was changing. This was not the birth of man, but the earliest moment something unlike an ape began to take shape. And for the first time, nature whispered, "Stand up or fall behind." They didn't look like us. Not really. Their faces were flatter, their brains smaller, their limbs stronger, adapted for climbing. But something had shifted, subtly, irrevocably. Fossils like Sahelanthropus, chidensis, and Auroran tuganensis, dated to around this time, mark a critical moment in our evolutionary story. These weren't humans. They weren't even Homo, but they were different. Their skulls suggest a change in posture, possibly upright walking. Their teeth hint at diets more complex than their cousins. And their mere existence implies one truth. Evolution had chosen a new experiment. These were apes, still bound to the forest, but also testing the edge of the grassland. Creatures torn between two worlds, the safety of trees and the opportunity of the ground. They didn't know they were the beginning of something, but they were. Something no one, not even nature, could fully predict. In this ancient world, the apes didn't just survive, they thrived. Not with tools or fire, but with something more primal: instinct, cooperation, and adaptability. They moved in small groups, clinging tightly to their young, sharing food, grooming one another not just for hygiene, but for trust. Their communication wasn't words, but glances, calls, and body language. Subtle systems honed over millions of years. When predators circled or storms rolled in, they didn't fight alone. They scattered as one, climbed as one, regrouped as one. And in those moments of warning cries, shared protection, and mutual care, something quietly took root. It wasn't intelligence that separated them from beasts. It was relationship. What we call human didn't arrive with tools. It began in the eyes of one ape looking after another and refusing to let go. They didn't stand to be tall. They stood to see. As forests gave way to open woodlands and tall grasses, life in the trees grew more uncertain. Food was scattered. Predators had wider lines of sight. Staying low meant staying vulnerable. Some apes began to spend more time on the ground, not out of preference but necessity. And those who could lift their heads above the grass, peer into the distance, and spot danger early had a better chance of making it through the day. Walking on two legs wasn't efficient. It was awkward, slow, and exhausting. But it freed the hands. It changed the view. It made carrying food, tools, or infants possible. It wasn't a leap towards civilization. It was a stumble away from extinction. Upright posture wasn't brilliance. It was biology under pressure. And pressure, as always, shapes the future. Among the scattered trees and rising grasses of ancient Africa, life was never solitary. For the apes who inhabited this shifting world, survival was not just a matter of strength or speed, it was about staying connected. They lived in small, tightly knit groups where every individual mattered. Grooming wasn't a ritual of vanity, it was a language of reassurance. A gentle touch on the back, a warning call echoing through the brush, a protective posture when predators loomed. These were the foundations of something far deeper than instinct. They carried their infants close, watched over the young of others, and shared what little they found. In these daily gestures, we glimpse the earliest expressions of empathy and cooperation, long before our species ever learned to speak. It wasn't intelligence that bound them, it was presence, responsibility, and trust. Long before culture or society took form, they were already living by its rules. Quietly, almost imperceptibly, the architecture of what would become human connection was being built. It's tempting to overlook this chapter of history. After all, there were no tools, no fire, no language, no art, nothing that fits our usual markers of progress. But to ignore this era is to misunderstand where we truly come from. This was not a time of inventions, but of foundations. In the slow rhythms of daily survival, of learning to share space, read danger, nurture young, our deepest traits were forged. Bipedal walking, social bonds, a widening diet, longer childhoods. Each emerged not from brilliance, but from biological pressure and behavioral adaptation. These changes didn't make headlines in prehistory, but they changed everything that followed. Without this long, quiet prelude, there would be no Homo habilis to craft stone tools, no Homo erectus to migrate, no sapiens to dream. The ancestors of 6 million years ago were not building civilizations, but they were building the possibility of one. And that, perhaps, is the most important legacy of all. They made the future possible without ever knowing it. What lingers from this forgotten era isn't a single fossil or behavior. It's a quiet echo that still shapes us today. The instinct to belong, the urge to protect, the ability to observe and adapt. These didn't begin with Homo sapiens. They began with the apes who stayed close, who watched the grass move before the predator appeared, who carried their young until their arms ached, who stood not to conquer, but to survive. In their world, there were no names, no history, no awareness of the future. And yet they laid its path. They taught us, without knowing, that the body must change to fit the land, that the mind must stretch to meet uncertainty, and that the heart, even before it has words, knows how to hold on to another. When we ask what it means to be human, we often look for genius. But perhaps we should look first for the ones who stayed when others fled, who stood when others fell, who adapted when the world turned cruel. Because before we were a species, we were a choice, and we are still making it.